Motivation is not rare, it is not broken, and it is not your problem. What fails consistently is the structure surrounding it. Even strong motivation struggles to persist inside unstable conditions. In a disordered life, motivation cannot carry action for long. It fluctuates, exhausts itself, and fades under pressure. Structure determines what effort can survive, not momentary intensity. Modern culture treats motivation as a resource, something that must be generated, protected, optimized. Entire industries exist to help people get motivated. When progress slows or stops, the explanation is always the same. You lost motivation. This explanation is attractive. It is simple. It feels personal and actionable, but it is misleading. It places the failure inside the individual rather than inside the system they live in. It suggests that the solution is to feel differently instead of to live differently. Motivation has always mattered to human action, but it has never been the governing force of sustained behavior. Over time, structure determines continuity. Structure absorbs variability. It reduces the number of decisions required to act. It creates conditions where repetition becomes possible without constant internal negotiation. Motivation still plays a role. It supports engagement, learning, and responsiveness. But without a stable framework, it cannot sustain behavior across time. Structure carries action through resistance, boredom, and uncertainty. It allows effort to compound instead of resetting every day. A disordered life taxes motivation continuously. Decisions accumulate. Contexts shift unexpectedly. Energy leaks through friction. Under these conditions, even strong motivation produces limited results. Low motivation accelerates collapse, but high motivation cannot compensate for instability indefinitely. The issue is not effort. It is exposure to disorder. Each unstructured choice consumes attention. Each unclear routine forces recalibration. Without environmental consistency, humans must compensate constantly, and compensation has limits. A disordered life taxes motivation continuously. Decisions accumulate. Contexts shift unexpectedly. Energy leaks through friction. Under these conditions, even strong motivation produces limited results. Low motivation accelerates collapse, but high motivation cannot compensate for instability indefinitely. The issue is not effort. It is exposure to disorder. Each unstructured choice consumes attention. Each unclear routine forces recalibration. Without environmental consistency, humans must compensate constantly, and compensation has limits. People often misinterpret this as personal failure. They attempt to increase intensity instead of reducing instability. They push harder where structure is missing. Structure does not remove agency. It preserves it. By limiting unnecessary variability, it protects attention and energy. It ensures that effort is applied repeatedly instead of wasted reactively. Humans remain central actors, but what they can sustain is governed by the conditions around them. Order stabilizes behavior before motivation is asked to perform beyond its limits. Behavior follows structure more reliably than intention. What repeats in daily life is rarely what people want, but what their environment permits without resistance. Goals express desire. Structure determines persistence. Stable conditions allow actions to recur with less effort. Repetition creates momentum. Momentum reduces dependence on constant internal drive. Over time, motivation becomes supportive rather than load-bearing. This does not diminish human agency. It protects it. When structure absorbs friction, people retain energy for judgment, learning, and adaptation. Without structure, motivation must compensate for every failure point, and it cannot do so indefinitely. Most breakdowns are not dramatic. They are accumulative. Small inconsistencies compound into fatigue. Unclear routines multiply decisions. Variability erodes follow-through quietly. Structure interrupts this process. It creates predictable sequences. It limits unnecessary choice. It ensures that effort is applied where it matters instead of being spent maintaining basic order. Motivation still fluctuates. That is human. But under stable conditions, fluctuation does not result in collapse. Action continues even when intensity drops. Structure governs continuity where intention alone cannot. Roman legions operated across long distances and changing conditions where morale naturally varied. Fatigue, fear, weather, and uncertainty affected soldiers as they do any human group. To function consistently, Roman camps followed standardized layouts whenever possible. Streets, zones, command areas, and supply spaces were predefined. This reduced daily uncertainty and limited the need for improvisation in basic operations. Soldiers did not decide where things belonged. Movement and work occurred within a stable framework reinforced by routine and discipline. By absorbing variability, structure reduced reliance on constant motivation. Effort continued even under strain. What endured was not emotion, but arrangement. Order stabilized behavior before morale became decisive. When life lacks structure, motivation becomes noisy. It surges briefly, then dissipates under pressure. People interpret this as inconsistency, weakness, or lack of character. In reality, they are exposed to instability. They operate inside systems that demand constant adjustment and compensation. Under these conditions, even capable individuals struggle to sustain effort. Order does not inspire in the emotional sense. It stabilizes. It reduces friction before action begins. It ensures that effort accumulates instead of resetting repeatedly. This is not a moral judgment. It is a structural observation. Human factors always matter, but they perform best when they are supported rather than relied upon as foundations. Structure allows motivation to play its proper role, not as the engine, but as a contributor. Not as a constant demand, but as a variable input. Where structure is present, drops in energy do not cause collapse. Where structure is absent, even enthusiasm fails quickly. Stability changes what effort can sustain over time. It determines whether action survives ordinary human fluctuation.